Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. With Hungary's parliamentary elections looming on April 12th, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance continued his two-day trip in Budapest Wednesday to lend visible support to the country's Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, reigniting controversy over foreign involvement in domestic politics. Now, the visit comes amid growing scrutiny of Hungary's closer ties to Russia, including a recently revealed 12-point cooperation plan spanning energy, trade and cultural sectors, and rising opposition momentum for Péter Magyar's Tisza party. Now we speak now with Csaba Lukács, a Managing Director of Magyar Hang. Good to have you with us here on TVP World. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
So just give us your take briefly. I want to kick off these 2 days of the Vice President in Budapest. What's your assessment here? What kind of impact? Will it move the needle for Viktor Orbán or not?
To be honest, we don't know what's happened during the visit beyond the friendly gestures, but the whole thing seemed like a campaign event. And the US Vice President is not a well-known or popular politician in Hungary, so I don't think that they will have any significant impact on the elections. Moreover, the visit caused a great deal of inconvenience for Budapest residents and passengers at the international airport, and these stories received significant coverage in the press, so I don't think that it will influence too much our elections, which will be Sunday.
All right. So you said it's a kind of a campaign event, but at the same time, in the aftermath of all this, we're getting reports, I believe it's from Reuters, who are saying there's a deal here that's come through on energy and defense between the United States and Hungary, with Hungary buying a lot of American oil and also defensive equipment. Was this, say, a surprise?
Nobody knows what, as I told you, nobody knows what's happened behind the curtain. So Orban was expecting for Donald Trump to come, but obviously because of the Iranian war, he couldn't come, and he sent his friend and his supplement to Budapest. So I don't think that they had really hard discussion, and they didn't sign any long-term agreement between Hungary and US.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll get more of that, I think, in the coming days ahead. Also, in terms of what he said there, what Vice President Vance said, I mean, he was very much criticized for meddling. I mean, we have various leaders saying, well, this is going above and beyond what should really any politician should be doing for another country. Also, I'm just curious on your sense, how it's been taken on the ground. How did ordinary Hungarians react to this? Essentially an endorsement, not just by Donald Trump, also by the Vice President.
So Trump's support for Viktor Orbán initially helped Orbán, especially when it seems Budapest might host a meeting between Putin and Trump on peace negotiations. Orbán built his entire campaign around peace. He and Donald Trump were the peacemakers, while Europe and the Hungarian opposition were the warmongers. This narrative was then completely shattered when Trump had the Venezuelan president kidnapped and attacked Iran. Now, among undecided voters, Trump is more like a ballast for Orbán, while among loyal Fidesz voters, this strengthens Orbán's position because he's the politician who is friend with the American president. So for the loyal voters, it was a good argument that Orbán is not isolated at all. But for undecided voters or oppositionals, that was really that had nothing to means for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I want to jump into more of, you said, the undecided voters. If you can give us a little bit more on that. I think especially what's interesting is also the diaspora Hungarians, where they will be voting. If we look at different communities, also in Romania, how do they typically vote in all this, and how critical is their vote going to be on Sunday?
A total of nearly 500,000 people are voting by mail in the current elections, 310,000 of whom are from Romania. This could decide at most 3 seats, which is not too many, but in a close race, it could be decisive. In 2014, for example, votes from across the border secured the extra seat for Fidesz, what was needed to reach a 2/3 in the parliament, so two-third majority. It is also telling that 4 years ago, 94% of mail-in voters went to Fidesz, a result typically seen in North Korea, so-called elections.
Yeah, so, and also I think you mentioned the earlier elections, what will come up, and if we analyze this a little bit, just I think it was 2014 as well, where I think Fidesz also won actually with less than 46% of the vote, but actually carried, I think, 90 of the districts, or 90% of the districts. So again, has this fundamentally changed? Where do you see the challenge coming up once we look at voters coming in on Sunday? Is it going to be free and fair? How is the diaspora going to factor into all this?
As a journalist, I deal quite a bit with the vulnerability of mail-in ballots and potential fraud. I was in Romania just last week, where I brought back 4 bank ballots. These had been sent to the addresses of people who had already passed away. So even the dead people are receiving the Hungarian voting ballots, which is ridiculous. And practically anyone can obtain a blank, unfilled absentee ballot from abroad. The Hungarian press was not allowed access to the ad hoc collection points operated by a foundation affiliated with the Romanian political party. So it's unclear how the mail-in ballots are collected, stored, and transported to the consulates at these locations. It's also unknown who has access to these mail-in ballots. For example, even non-Hungarian citizens. So that's the situation abroad. What will happen in Hungary, it's a really special occasion, because now the Tisza party has enough volunteers to send observators to every district. So probably the big cheatings will be not as easy as was before. So we are expecting an extremely high turnout. And the survey, which was published yesterday by Median, it shows that Tisza is really close to get 2/3 in the parliament, what would be a real miracle. So nobody was expecting so huge gap between the government party, Fidesz, and the Tisza.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think we'll all be obviously waiting for that final result. But once, let's say, the proverbial dust settles, how quickly would we know? I mean, of those votes being counted, the mail-in ballots, as you mentioned, when could we kind of understand where the win will come from? Is that going to be on Monday morning? How long do you think we'll wait? And as you said, in your mind, how many irregularities will we see?
So if it's a close race, it could happen that we will have no final result until 1 or 2 weeks. So all foreign votes has to come to Budapest. They have to count it. There will be probably some debates about it was fair or not was fair. So if the gap will be a huge between two parties, we will have result around Monday morning. If not, it could take even months to know the final result.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then I think also the scenarios of who will challenge it. Let's scenario one, if Tisza does manage it and if Peter Magyar does get that majority, do you think that that transition will be a smooth one?
That's a really good question. So we had one case in 2002 when Orban was giving the power without any obstacles, but now they have much more to lose. So that's the biggest and the tough question in Hungary. What will happen if Orban will lose the elections?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these are many of those questions. And one of those issues, I mean, we talked also already about Trump and that influence it has on Hungary. Let's just also talk about the other big one, which is the other power, which is Russia. And this is something also that Orban has been very much touting and celebrating, as these close links with Russia. We just have another recent call that's come through between the foreign ministers Szijjártó and Lavrov about, again, close ties with Russia and with Hungary. We have this agreement, this Russia agreement with Hungary, 12-point Hungary plan that Politico has cited recently. How, let's say, effective, or rather how influential and how much will Hungarians, we look at all this, it's close to the election, does it impact their actual vote? Is this something they knew already with all these latest revelations?
Yep. So that's one of the hardest topic of the election campaign, obviously for Tisza, because Orban doesn't want to talk about that. So in almost every day, we have a scandal related with the strong Russian relations. According to Russian government documents obtained by Politico, Hungary and Russia signed a 12-point cooperation agreement last December that was totally annulled by the Hungarian people. They knew nothing about this. And this was another shock from the election campaign regarding how Hungary is growing ever closer to Russia. So that leaked conversation between Orban and Putin has also surfaced, which is a shocking example of servility as well, servility. Moreover, it's embarrassing how Viktor Orbán, quoting a folktale, described Hungary as the mice helping the Russian lion. So these things matter a great deal in the election campaign, and it becoming increasingly clear to more and more people that on Sunday they must choose between the Russian path and European path. So last day, Russian propagandist was visiting one of the election campaign of Magyar Péter, and even when Magyar Péter was greeting him in English, the whole crowd was starting to cheer, Russian go home, Russian go home. So that shows that the opposition people are really afraid what will happen with their country if Orban will win the elections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned choosing between Russia and that European path. That's also was in the target of J.D. Vance, saying that very much he hasn't seen that kind of meddling, saying bureaucrats in Brussels are to blame. How much does that really resonate in terms of the electorate right now, from the big urban centers to the countryside? How do they perceive Europe? I mean, Orban sees Europe as an enemy, but what about most ordinary people?
The majority of Hungarians wants to stay in Europe. So everybody has some relatives who left Hungary and they are working in the Western countries. So, and a lot of youngsters are coming home for voting to keep the country in Europe. So I think that kind of Russian friendship is not so popular among countryside Hungarian as well, except the elderly people who believe that Orban knows what he is doing, and if he's saying that Putin is our friend, we should be really friendly with Russia. But those are only the elderly, low-educated people. The intellectuality and the youngsters are totally pro-EU.
All right, so one of those moments where really every vote will count. We're giving the latest here on that. Look, thanks so much for all that. Pleasure having you on here. Csaba Lukács, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Bye-bye.